Chapter 1. The Scent of Secrets, Sarah. Whitmore had always believed that secrets were meant to be kept buried. She pressed one hand against her stomach as she navigated the crowded Seattle sidewalk, her other hand clutching a paper bag from the pharmacy. Inside were prenatal vitamins, ginger candies for the nausea, and a pamphlet about first trimester care that she'd immediately shoved to the bottom of the bag where no one could see it. 8 weeks. She was 8 weeks along, and the only people who knew were her doctor and the father. Except the father had no idea he was a father, and Sarah intended to keep it that way. The October wind whipped through the streets, carrying with it the scent of rain and dying leaves. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter, grateful for the oversized cut that would hide her secret for at least a few more months. After that, she'd have to figure something out. Maybe leave the city entirely. Start over somewhere. No one knew her name or her history. Somewhere far from him, she was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the man standing, perfectly still in the middle of the sidewalk, until she nearly collided with him. "I'm sorry." The apology died on her lips as she looked up. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes that were an impossible shade of silver. Not gray, not light blue, but silver, metallic and luminous, like moonlight given form. He wore an expensive black coat that did nothing to hide the predatory grace of his movements as he stepped aside, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "No harm done," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in her chest. Sarah mumbled another apology and tried to move past him, but his hand shot out, gripping her arm with surprising gentleness. She froze, every nerve in her body suddenly screaming danger even though he wasn't hurting her. "You smell different," he said, his head tilting slightly as his nostrils flared. "Like flowers and rain, but underneath." She yanked her arm free, her heart hammering. "Excuse me?" The man's expression shifted from curiosity to something sharper, more focused. His silver eyes dropped to her midsection for just a fraction of a second before returning to her face. "Forgive me, that was inappropriate." It really was. Sarah clutched her pharmacy bag tighter and stepped around him, walking as quickly as she could without outright running. She could feel his gaze boring into her back, could sense him still standing there, watching her disappear into the crowd. What the hell was that? She'd heard of men with heightened senses, some genetic quirk or trained skill. But the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd smelled her, it felt wrong, invasive. Like he'd seen straight through her carefully constructed facade to the secret growing inside her. Sarah didn't look back until she'd turned the corner onto her street. When she finally did glance over her shoulder, the man was gone, swallowed up by the city as if he'd never existed at all. She told herself it was nothing. Just a weird encounter with a strange man. Seattle was full of odd characters. But as she climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that those silver eyes had recognized something in her, something she'd been desperately trying to hide. Inside her apartment, Sarah dropped the pharmacy bag on the kitchen counter and leaned against the sink, willing her racing heart to slow. The encounter had rattled her more than she wanted to admit. She pulled out her phone and stared at the contact labeled simply, "Do not call." Her thumb hovered over it for a long moment before she forcibly shoved the phone into her pocket. No, she wasn't calling Cale. She'd made that decision the morning after the Harvest Moon Festival, when she'd woken up alone in that cabin with bite marks on her shoulder and the taste of pine and rain still on her lips. She'd made it again when the pregnancy test came back positive. And she'd stood in her bathroom crying silent tears because she knew that telling him would destroy everything. Cale Thornwood wasn't just some random man she'd met at a festival. He was complicated, dangerous, part of a world she'd only glimpsed the edges of that night, and even that glimpse had been enough to terrify her. The way he'd moved in the darkness, too fast to be human, the way his eyes had glowed in the moonlight, the way he'd whispered things about fate and bonds and forever that had seemed romantic in the moment, but insane in the harsh light of day. And then there were the rumors. Her friend Mara, who'd invited her to the festival in the first place, had mentioned them casually over brunch the next week. Stories about the Thornwood family and their estate in the mountains. whispers about people who went into the woods and came back changed, or didn't come back at all. Sarah had laughed it off at the time, too embarrassed to admit she'd spent the night with a man whose last name she'd only learned from local gossip. But the rumors had stuck with her, growing louder in her mind as her body began to change in ways that felt distinctly unhuman. The heightened sense of smell that made her gag at perfumes that had never bothered her before. The way she could hear her neighbor's television through walls that should have been soundproof. The dreams of running on 4 legs through moonlit forests, her body powerful and free in ways it had never been when awake. She'd tried to convince herself it was just pregnancy hormones. Strange symptoms that would pass after the baby was born. But deep down, in a place she refused to examine too closely, she knew it was something more. Something impossible. The knock on her door made her jump so violently that she nearly dropped her phone. For one wild moment, she thought it might be the silver-eyed stranger from the street, somehow having followed her home. But when she checked the peephole, it was just Mrs. Chen from across the hall, holding a casserole dish. Sarah opened the door with a forced smile. "Mrs. Chen, you didn't have to—" "You look pale, dear," the elderly woman interrupted, pressing the warm dish into Sarah's hands. "You need to eat more. Take care of yourself." "I will. Thank you." Mrs. Chen's gaze sharpened, and for just a second Sarah felt exposed, as if the older woman could see right through her. But then the moment passed, and Mrs. Chen was patting her arm and shuffling back to her own apartment, calling over her shoulder about adding more ginger to help with digestion. Sarah closed the door and locked it, setting the casserole aside. She moved to the window and looked out at the darkening Seattle skyline, at the mountains visible in the distance where everything had changed. She didn't know if Cale was looking for her. Didn't know if he even remembered that night, or if it had meant anything to him beyond a moment's passion. But she did know one thing with absolute certainty. She would protect this child, no matter what it cost her, even if it meant running from the only man who'd ever made her feel truly alive. Even if it meant hiding from a world she was only beginning to understand, even if it meant keeping secrets that might eventually destroy them both. Chapter 2. The Stranger's Shadow. The morning light filtered through the curtains of Sarah's small apartment, casting pale gold across the hardwood floor. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, the man from the street, with those impossible silver eyes that seemed to pierce straight through her carefully constructed walls. She pressed a hand to her still flat stomach, a gesture that had become automatic over the past 8 weeks. The secret she carried felt heavier with each passing day, a weight that no one else could see but that threatened to crush her from the inside out. 3 months, she reminded herself. 3 months since that night. 3 months since everything changed. Sarah pushed herself off the couch where she'd spent most of the night and moved to the kitchen. The nausea hit her in waves now, unpredictable and relentless. She'd learned to keep crackers within reach at all times, to move slowly in the mornings, to hide the exhaustion behind carefully applied makeup and forced smiles. The prenatal vitamins sat in a drawer beneath the sink, hidden behind cleaning supplies where no casual visitor would find them. She swallowed one with water, grimacing at the metallic taste that lingered on her tongue. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from her coworker, Marissa. "Coffee before work? You look like you need it." Sarah typed back a quick excuse about errands and set the phone down. She couldn't face Marissa's perceptive questions this morning. Couldn't risk her friend noticing the changes that Sarah herself was still struggling to accept. The knock at her door came so suddenly that she jumped, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the peephole, she saw him. The stranger from yesterday stood in the hallway, one hand braced against the doorframe, his head slightly bowed as if he were listening for movement inside. He wore dark jeans and a gray Henley that emphasized the lean muscle of his shoulders. And even through the distorted fisheye lens, those silver eyes seemed to glow with their own light. Sarah's breath caught. Every instinct screamed at her to stay silent, to pretend she wasn't home. But something else, something deeper and more primal, urged her to open the door. She compromised by leaving the chain lock engaged as she cracked it open. "How did you find my address?" His jaw tightened. "I need to talk to you." "That's not an answer." "You're sent," he said simply, and the word sent a shiver down her spine. I followed your scent. Sarah's hand moved to close the door, but he was faster, his palm flat against the wood. Not pushing, just there. A reminder that he could open it if he wanted to. I'm not here to hurt you, he said, and something in his voice, a rough sincerity, made her pause. But we need to talk, now, before... He stopped, his nostrils flaring slightly as his gaze dropped to her midsection. The world seemed to tilt. Before what? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. His eyes met hers again, and she saw something there that terrified her more than any threat could have. Recognition. Certainty. Knowledge. You're carrying my child. The words hung in the air between them. Impossible and undeniable all at once. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her stomach, a protective gesture she couldn't suppress. You're insane. I don't even know you, don't you? He leaned closer to the gap in the door, and she caught his scent. Pine and rain and something wild that made her head spin. 3 months ago, the Harvest Moon Festival in the mountains. You were there with friends. You got separated from your group. Her blood ran cold. She had been there, on a girls' weekend that was supposed to help her forget about her ex-fiancé's betrayal. She'd wandered away from the bonfire, drawn by the full moon and the need for solitude. And then, the wolf, she breathed. His expression shifted, something fierce and possessive flickering across his features. Not a wolf, a shifter. And that night, under the full moon, with the mate bond calling, he stopped himself, shaking his head. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was supposed to maintain control. But you were there, and the bond was so strong and... Stop. Sarah pressed her free hand to her temple, trying to process what he was saying. Shifters. Mate bonds. It sounded like something from the paranormal romance novels she secretly devoured late at night. Not something that could possibly be real. But she remembered that night with strange clarity despite the wine she'd consumed. Remembered dancing alone in a moonlit clearing, feeling reckless and free for the first time since her world had shattered. Remembered eyes watching her from the shadows. Silver eyes that had seemed human one moment and definitely not human the next. She remembered warmth and desire, and a connection that had felt cosmic in its intensity. She remembered waking up at dawn in her tent, alone but marked in ways she couldn't explain, with only fragments of memory and the certainty that something profound had changed. This isn't possible, she said, but even to her own ears, the protest sounded weak. The child you're carrying isn't entirely human. Sarah. His use of her name startled her. She hadn't told him what it was. You can feel it, can't you? The way everything seems sharper now, the way your senses have heightened. The dreams. God, the dreams. She'd been having them since the positive pregnancy test. Vivid, visceral visions of running through forests, of hunting beneath the moon, of a howl that resonated in her very bones. Who are you? She asked. Cale Thornwood, alpha of the Silvercrest Pack. He straightened, and there was something regal in the movement, something that spoke of command and ancient power. And that child you're carrying? They're not just mine. They're my heir. The next alpha. And there are people, things, that would kill to prevent them from being born. Sarah's hand tightened on the door. You expect me to believe I expect you to survive. His voice dropped to a growl that raised every hair on her arms. Because whether you believe me or not, you're in danger. We both smelled it yesterday, the other shifter tracking you. He knows what you're carrying, and if the rival pack gets to you before I can protect you... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Sarah looked into those impossible silver eyes and saw the truth there. Or at least, a truth. Whatever was happening, whatever insane supernatural world she'd apparently stumbled into, this man believed every word he was saying, and some deep, instinctive part of her believed it too. If I unlock this door, she said slowly, you're going to tell me everything. No half-truths. No mysterious alpha male nonsense. Everything. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Everything, he agreed. Sarah took a deep breath, her hand moving to the chain lock. She didn't know if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or finally confronting the truth she'd been running from since that positive test appeared. The lock clicked open. Cale. Thornwood stepped into her apartment, and Sarah knew with absolute certainty that her life would never be the same. Chapter 3. Truths and Transformations. Kyle stood in the center of Sarah's small living room, his presence making the space feel impossibly smaller. He moved with careful deliberation, as if aware that any sudden movement might send her bolting. His silver eyes swept over her modest furniture, the stack of medical books on the coffee table, the framed photographs of smiling faces that told the story of a life he knew nothing about. "You should sit," he said finally, gesturing to the couch. "What I'm about to tell you? You'll want to be sitting." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I've been standing just fine for the last 8 weeks while my entire reality crumbled. I think I can handle a few more minutes." Something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe, or admiration. "You're stronger than I expected. You don't know anything about me. I know you're terrified," he said quietly. "I can hear your heartbeat from here. It's racing like a rabbit's. But you opened the door anyway. That takes courage." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. "You said I was in danger. Explain that." "Now." Cale exhaled slowly, and she could have sworn she saw his breath mist in the air despite the apartment's warmth. "The supernatural world operates by rules most humans never learn. Hierarchies, territories, power structures that have existed for thousands of years." He moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. Werewolves, shifters, were organized into packs. Each pack has an alpha who leads, who protects, who ensures the survival of the bloodline. "And you're one of these alphas," Sarah said, struggling to keep her voice steady. The Silvercrest Pack has held territory in the Pacific Northwest for 12 generations. We're one of the oldest, most powerful packs in North America. He turned back to face her. We're also one of the most targeted. Targeted by whom? Rival packs who want our territory. Rogue shifters who reject pack hierarchy. Hunters who believe we're monsters that need to be exterminated. His hands curled into fists at his sides. And now, because of what you're carrying, ancient bloodlines who see your child as either a threat or a prize. Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. "I don't understand. Why would anyone care about—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say "my baby" out loud. Not to him. Not yet. Because you're human, Sarah. Cale crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. A human woman carrying a pure-blooded alpha's child. Do you know how rare that is? How impossible it should be? She shook her head mutely. Shifters typically only produce offspring with other shifters or with humans who carry dormant supernatural genes. Humans who have shifter ancestry buried somewhere. In their family line. His voice dropped lower. But I've checked every database, every genealogical record I could access. Your bloodline is completely human, going back at least 8 generations. There's no explanation for why the mating bond formed between us. No reason you should have conceived at all. Mating bond, Sarah repeated, the words feeling strange on her tongue. You keep saying that. What does it mean? Cale's eyes flashed brighter for a moment. Pure silver fire. It means that my wolf recognized you as its mate the moment I caught your scent at the festival. It means that every instinct in my body is screaming at me to mark you, claim you, protect you from anything that might harm you or our child. He took a shuddering breath. It means that even if I wanted to walk away, and I couldn't. The bond won't let me. Sarah's mind reeled. That's insane. People don't just bond like that. Love doesn't work that way. This isn't about love, he said, though something in his expression suggested otherwise. Not yet. The mating bond is primal, instinctual. It's about survival, about ensuring the strongest possible offspring, about 2 souls recognizing each other across lifetimes. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and placed his hand over hers where it rested on her stomach. But love can grow from it. Often does. The touch sent electricity racing up her arm. She should pull away, should tell him to leave, should do anything except stand there feeling the warmth of his palm seeping through her shirt while her traitorous body remembered exactly how he'd touched her under the full moon. The night of the festival, she whispered. I thought it was a dream. The way you moved, the things you said about destiny and forever. I woke up and convinced myself I'd imagined half of it. You didn't imagine anything. His thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand. I lost control that night. The full moon amplifies everything. Emotions, instincts, the pull of the bond. I should have been stronger. Should have stayed away when I realized what you were to me. But I couldn't. What am I to you? The question escaped before she could stop it. Cale's free hand came up to cup her face, his touch achingly gentle. Everything, my mate, the mother of my heir, the one person in this world who could bring my entire pack to its knees if anything happened to you. Sarah's breath hitched. I don't want that kind of power. You don't have a choice. The moment you conceived, you became part of pack politics whether you wanted to or not. His expression hardened. And there are those who will see you as a weakness to exploit. An unmated, unprotected human carrying alpha blood? You're a target, Sarah. For my enemies and possibly even for members of my own pack who think a human has no place in our world. Fear coiled in her stomach, sharp and cold. Then what am I supposed to do? I can't just join a werewolf pack. I have a life here, a job, friends. I'm a grad student, for God's sake. I have a thesis to finish. Your thesis won't matter if you're dead. The blunt words hung between them like a guillotine blade. Sarah pulled her hand away from his, needing distance to think. So what's your solution? I go back to the mountains with you? Playhouse in some shifter compound while you figure out how to keep me alive? The compound has better security than anywhere in the city, Cale said pragmatically. And you'd have pack healers who understand shifter pregnancies. This isn't going to be like a normal human pregnancy, Sarah. The child will have abilities, needs, that human doctors won't understand. Abilities, she repeated faintly. Like what? Enhanced strength even in the womb. Accelerated development. The pregnancy will only last about 6 months instead of 9. And towards the end, he hesitated. You'll start to change too, temporarily. The bond and the baby will bring out any latent abilities you might have, even ones you didn't know existed. Sarah sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly unable to support her. This is insane. This is completely insane. Cale knelt in front of her, bringing them eye to eye. I know how this sounds, but I've been alive for 32 years, and I've seen things that would shatter most people's understanding of reality. This is real, Sarah. The danger is real, and I will do whatever it takes to keep you and our child safe. Even if I say no, she challenged. Even if I tell you to leave and never come back? His jaw clenched. I'd respect your wishes, but I'd also station guards around your building, track your movements, eliminate any threats before they could get close. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You can hate me for it if you want, but I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. I'm not yours, Sarah said, but the words lacked conviction. Cale's smile was small and sad. Tell that to your body, Sarah. Tell that to the bond that's already forming between us, whether we want it or not. He stood, moving toward the door. I'll give you 24 hours to think about it. But tomorrow night you're making a choice. Come with me willingly, or I'll take you by force, because I will not lose you to my enemies. He opened the door, paused, then looked back at her one last time. For what it's worth, I didn't plan any of this. But now that I've found you, now that I know what you're carrying, I'll burn down anyone who tries to take you from me. Then he was gone, leaving Sarah alone with her racing thoughts and the terrifying realization that everything she'd thought she knew about the world was about to change forever. Cale's expression softened, always, for as long as you need. They sat on the edge of the bed, close but not touching, and talked until the moon rose high outside the window. And for the first time since that positive pregnancy test, Sarah felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't facing this impossible future alone. Chapter 4. The weight of choices. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling while moonlight painted silver patterns across the walls. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant wail of sirens, the creak of floorboards as her upstairs neighbor paced their apartment. Since when had her hearing become so acute? The bond and the baby will bring out any latent abilities you might have. Kyle's words echoed in her mind, impossible to ignore. She pressed both hands to her stomach, trying to feel something, anything, that might confirm what he'd told her was true. But there was only the familiar flutter of early pregnancy, the slight bloating, the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. Except it wasn't just exhaustion anymore, was it? She'd been attributing everything to normal pregnancy symptoms. But now that she really thought about it, the changes went deeper. The way she could smell her neighbor's coffee brewing 3 doors down. The strange restlessness that drove her to pace her apartment at odd hours. The dreams that felt less like dreams and more like memories of something ancient stirring inside her. Sarah threw off the covers and padded to the window. The city sprawled below, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Somewhere out there, Cale was probably watching, waiting, his 24-hour deadline hanging over her like a sword. Come with me willingly, or I'll take you by force. The audacity of it should have infuriated her. She should be calling the police, getting a restraining order, doing something to protect herself from this man who claimed ownership over her body and her unborn child. But instead, she found herself remembering the way his hand had felt on hers, the genuine fear in his eyes when he'd talked about the dangers she faced, the resignation in his voice when he'd said he would respect her wishes even as he prepared to violate them. He wasn't just some controlling alpha male stereotype. He was terrified, and that terror made everything he'd said feel horribly, undeniably real. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "Are you awake?" Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. She knew without asking who it was. Her fingers trembled as she typed back. "How did you get this number?" The response came immediately. "I'm an alpha. I have resources. Are you all right?" She stared at the glowing screen, torn between irritation and something that felt dangerously close to relief. "I'm fine. Can't sleep, neither can I. The bond is making my wolf restless. It knows you're upset." Sarah bit her lip. This was insane. She was texting with a man who claimed to be a werewolf about a mystical bond she didn't believe in. Except, she did believe it, didn't she? Some part of her, some deep instinctive part, recognized the truth in everything he'd said. "Can I ask you something?" She typed anything that night at the festival. "Before everything happened, why were you there?" The response took longer this time. She watched the 3 dots appear and disappear several times before his message finally came through. "I was hunting a rogue shifter who'd been killing humans in the area. The festival was his hunting ground. I was trying to stop him before he struck again." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Did you stop him?" "Yes. But then I caught your scent, and everything else stopped mattering. I tracked you to that clearing, intending to just make sure you were safe. But when I saw you dancing in the moonlight, so free and alive and mine, my control shattered. She should be horrified, should be planning her escape. Instead, she found herself typing, 'Do you regret it?' Never, not for a single moment. Do you, did she?" Sarah closed her eyes, remembering that night. The feeling of being truly seen for the first time in her life. The sense of belonging that had filled her when his arms wrapped around her. The certainty, however brief, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I don't know what I feel," she typed honestly. "This is all too much, I know, and I'm sorry for that. But Sarah, the danger is real. There was another shifter watching your building tonight. Not one of mine. I chased him off, but he'll be back. They all will, once word spreads about what you're carrying." Her free hand moved protectively to her stomach. What do they want? Some will want to kill the baby before it's born. An alpha heir with unprecedented bloodlines could shift the power balance in the shifter world. Others will want to take you, use you as leverage against me. And some, he paused, some will want to study you. Figure out how a completely human woman bonded with a purebred alpha. You'd become a lab rat, Sarah. For the rest of your life. Nausea rolled through her. And this time it had nothing to do with pregnancy. "You're trying to scare me? I'm trying to keep you alive. There's a difference." Sarah moved away from the window, suddenly paranoid about being visible from the street. "If I come with you tomorrow, what happens? Do I just live with a bunch of werewolves? Give up everything I've built here? You'd have your own quarters in the main house. Privacy when you need it. Protection always. And you wouldn't have to give up your studies. We have scholars in the pack, human and shifter both. You could finish your thesis. What about after the baby is born?" Another long pause. "That depends on you. On whether the bond fully forms. On whether you can accept what I am and what our child will be. And if I can't, Then you'll still be protected, still be provided for. The child will need to be raised within the pack to learn control, but you'd have access whenever you wanted. I won't keep you prisoner, Sarah, but I also won't let you face this world alone and undefended. Sarah sank onto her bed, phone clutched in her hand. Everything he was offering sounded reasonable, almost generous. But it also meant accepting a reality she'd spent the last 8 weeks trying to deny. I need to see it, she typed suddenly, before I agree to anything. I need to see you change. See proof that this isn't all an elaborate delusion. The response came quickly. Are you sure? It's not easy to witness. My wolf is large and the transformation can be violent. I need to know the truth. All of it. Tomorrow night then. I'll pick you up at sunset. Dress warm. We'll need to go somewhere private. A pause then. Thank you for giving me a chance. Sarah didn't respond. She set the phone aside and lay back down, her mind racing. Tomorrow night, she would either confirm that everything Kale had told her was real, or she would discover that she was dealing with an elaborate con artist. Either way, her life as she knew it was over. She must have dozed eventually, because when she opened her eyes again, pale dawn light was seeping through the curtains. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Marissa and a text from her thesis advisor asking about her progress. The normal world, demanding her attention. Expecting her to pretend everything was fine. Sarah dragged herself to the shower, letting hot water pour over her aching body. In the mirror afterward, she studied her reflection. She looked the same brown eyes, same pointed chin, same spattering of freckles across her nose. But something was different. Something in her gaze, maybe. A wildness that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had always been there, just waiting for the right catalyst to emerge. She dressed in jeans and a loose sweater, consciously choosing clothes that hid her changing body. The prenatal vitamin went down with a glass of water and a handful of crackers. Routine movements that felt surreal now that she knew what was growing inside her, not just a baby. An alpha heir, a being that would be capable of shifting between human and wolf. Her child would grow up in a world of ancient hierarchies and primal instincts, learning rules and customs she didn't understand, unless she walked away, disappeared, raised the child in ignorance of its heritage. But Kale's words haunted her. You'd become a lab rat. For the rest of your life, no. There was no escaping this. The only choice was how she faced it, on her own terms, or on someone else's. Sarah grabbed her keys and headed for the door. She had classes to attend, a thesis meeting to survive, and approximately 12 hours before Kale returned to show her truths, she wasn't sure she was ready to see. But as she stepped into the hallway, she caught a scent that made her freeze, pine and rain and something wild. He'd been here recently, standing guard outside her door while she slept, protecting her even when she hadn't asked for it, even when she'd given him no reason to hope she'd choose him. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the bond he'd described humming beneath her skin like a live wire. She'd felt it that night at the festival too, though she hadn't known what it was. The certainty of connection, the sense of coming home. Sunset couldn't come fast enough. Kale pulled her into his arms, and this time she didn't resist. Because you are losing something. Your old life, your independence, your certainty about how the world works. But Sarah? He tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. You're also gaining something. A family, a purpose, someone who will never let you face the darkness alone. And despite everything, despite all the fear and uncertainty, Sarah found herself believing him. Chapter 5. Under the Moon's Witness. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah sat through her morning seminar on cultural anthropology, barely hearing a word Professor Martinez said about kinship structures in indigenous societies. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, about to be inducted into the most literal kinship structure imaginable, and she couldn't focus on the academic theory for more than 30 seconds. Ms. Whitmore, do you have thoughts on matrilineal descent patterns? Sarah blinked, realizing the entire class was staring at her. Sorry, could you repeat the question? Professor Martinez's eyebrows rose, but she moved on to another student. Sarah had never been the type to zone out in class. She'd built her entire graduate career on meticulous attention to detail, on being the student who always had the answer. Now she could barely string together a coherent thought. When the seminar finally ended, Marissa cornered her in the hallway. "Okay, spill." "What's going on with you?" Her friend's dark eyes were sharp with concern. "You've been weird for weeks. You're pale, you're distracted, and you keep touching your stomach like—" Marissa's eyes widened. "Oh my God, Sarah, are you—" "Not here," Sarah hissed, glancing around at the other students streaming past. "Please, Marissa." Her friend grabbed her elbow and steered her into an empty study room, closing the door firmly behind them. "How far along?" There was no point in lying. Marissa had known her since undergrad. She could read Sarah better than anyone. 8 weeks. And the father? "It's complicated." "It's always complicated." Marissa's expression softened. "Is it that guy from the festival? The one you wouldn't tell me about?" Sarah nodded mutely, sinking into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. "He found me yesterday. Wants to be involved. And how do you feel about that?" How did she feel? Terrified, exhilarated, confused. Like she was standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea if there was water below or just rocks. "I don't know. He's intense. And there are things about him, about his life, that are really different from mine." "Different how? Is he married, in a cult? Witness protection?" "Something like that," Sarah muttered, close enough to the truth without revealing the insanity of it. "I'm meeting him tonight, to talk about what happens next." Marissa studied her for a long moment. "Do you feel safe with him?" The question surprised her. Did she? Kyle had threatened to take her by force, had talked about ownership and claims and bonds she hadn't consented to. By any rational measure, she should be terrified. But when she thought of him standing in her apartment, the raw vulnerability in his eyes when he'd talked about the mating bond, the way his hand had trembled slightly when he'd touched her stomach. "Yes," she said finally. "I think I do. Then trust your instincts." "But Sarah?" Marissa reached across and squeezed her hand. "If anything feels wrong, if he does anything that scares you, you call me. Immediately. I don't care what time it is." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. "Thank you. That's what friends are for." Marissa stood, shouldering her bag. "Now go home, rest, and try not to stress too much. Stress is bad for the baby." If only she knew, Sarah thought as Marissa left. Stress was probably the least of her concerns when the baby in question was a werewolf heir with unprecedented bloodlines. Sarah spent the afternoon in her apartment, trying to work on her thesis and failing miserably. Every word she typed felt meaningless compared to what awaited her at sunset. She'd chosen her outfit 3 times: jeans, hiking boots, and a warm jacket that could handle the mountain cold. Practical clothes for seeing something impossible. At 5:45, her phone buzzed. "I'm downstairs." Her stomach flipped. This was it. The moment of truth. Sarah grabbed her jacket and headed down, her legs feeling unsteady with each step. When she emerged from the building, she found Kyle leaning against a sleek black SUV, looking like he'd stepped out of some designer magazine. Dark jeans, leather jacket, hair slightly tousled by the wind, but it was his eyes that caught her, silver and luminous in the fading light, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You came," he said softly, as if he genuinely doubted she would. "You gave me an ultimatum. Didn't think I had much choice." Something flickered in his expression. Regret, maybe. "You always have a choice, Sarah. I may not like all of them, but they're yours to make." He opened the passenger door for her, and she slid inside, inhaling the scent that had haunted her dreams for 3 months. Pine and rain and earth, mixed now with leather and something uniquely him. Cale drove in silence, heading north toward the mountains. The city gave way to suburbs, then to dense forest, as they climbed higher into the foothills. Sarah watched the landscape change, feeling like she was leaving behind everything familiar and safe. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "Sacred ground, a clearing where my pack has performed transformations for generations." He glanced at her, his profile sharp in the dashboard light. "The moon will rise soon. It's not full, but it's strong enough. And with you nearby, my wolf will be eager to show himself." "Because of the bond?" "Because it wants you to see, wants you to understand what we are." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Fair warning, the first shift you witness can be overwhelming. My wolf is large, even for an alpha, and the transformation itself is brutal to watch. Sarah's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. I need to see it. All of it. They drove for another 20 minutes before Cale turned onto a barely visible dirt road. The SUV bounced over ruts and rocks until they reached a small clearing surrounded by towering pines. He killed the engine, and sudden silence enveloped them, broken only by the whisper of wind through branches. Stay near the vehicle, Cale instructed as they got out. My wolf won't hurt you, can't hurt you, because of the bond, but instinct might make you want to run, and running triggers the chase response. You're really selling this, Sarah muttered, but she positioned herself near the SUV's hood, gripping the cold metal for support. Kyle walked to the center of the clearing, his movements deliberate. Moonlight filtered through the trees, painting everything silver. He shrugged off his jacket, then his shirt, and Sarah's breath caught at the sight of him, all lean muscle and coiled power, with a tattoo of what looked like a wolf covering most of his back. That mark, she whispered. Is it my pack sign? Every alpha bears it. He turned to face her, and his eyes were glowing now, pure silver fire. Last chance to close your eyes. Not a chance. Kyle smiled, something wild and fierce, and then he began to change. It wasn't like the movies, no smooth CGI transition or mystical light show. His body broke, bones cracking and reforming with sounds that made Sarah's stomach lurch. He dropped to his hands and knees, a guttural growl tearing from his throat as his spine elongated, his limbs reshaped themselves. Fur rippled across his skin, dark as midnight, and his face pushed forward into a muzzle filled with gleaming teeth. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting the urge to scream, or run, or both. The transformation took maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity, and when it was over, there was no man in the clearing, only a wolf. But calling it a wolf was like calling a hurricane a breeze. The creature standing where Kyle had been was massive, easily 6 feet tall at the shoulder, with paws the size of dinner plates and eyes that still glowed with that same silver light. Its fur was black as a moonless night, and when it opened its mouth, the teeth were long enough to tear through bone. The wolf took a step toward her, and every survival instinct Sarah possessed screamed at her to run. But she held her ground, her hand still gripping the SUV's hood. As the creature approached with surprising grace, he stopped just a few feet away, lowering his massive head until those silver eyes were level with hers. She could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell the musk of wolf mixed with something that was still undeniably Cale. Slowly, hardly daring to breathe, Sarah released the hood and extended her hand. The wolf's nostrils flared, scenting her. Then he moved closer, pressing his huge head against her palm. The fur was coarser than she'd expected, but warm, and beneath it she could feel the solid reality of muscle and bone. "Kyle," she whispered. The wolf made a sound, not quite a growl, more like a rumble of acknowledgement. And in that moment, staring into those impossible silver eyes, Sarah felt the bond he'd described. It thrummed through her like a second heartbeat, connecting her to this magnificent, terrifying creature in ways she couldn't begin to explain. "Oh God," she breathed. "It's all true. It's all really true." The wolf, Cale, stepped even closer, until his massive body was pressed against hers, warm and solid and undeniably real. And despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the complete upheaval of everything she'd thought she knew about the world, Sarah felt safe. More than safe. She felt like she'd finally come home. Chapter 6. The Alpha's Confession. The wolf stayed pressed against her for what felt like an eternity, his warmth seeping into her bones. Sarah's fingers threaded through the thick fur at his neck, marveling at the reality of him. This wasn't a hallucination or a fever dream. This was Cale, transformed, powerful, and undeniably real. Gradually, he pulled away, padding back toward the center of the clearing. Sarah watched as his body began to shift again, the transformation somehow even more visceral in reverse. Bones cracked and reformed, fur receded into skin, and within moments, Kale was kneeling in the grass, human once more and breathing hard. She grabbed his discarded shirt and brought it to him, averting her eyes as he dressed. Her hands were shaking. "You okay?" His voice was rough, strained from the transformation. "I don't know what I am." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. I don't have words for what that was. Kyle finished pulling on his jacket and moved toward her slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal. "I know it's a lot to process." "A lot?" A slightly hysterical laugh escaped her. "Kale, I just watched you turn into a giant wolf. I touched you. I felt the bond you keep talking about. And it's real. It's so real. And I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything right now." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. His fingers were warm, solid, human. "Just breathe. That's all I'm asking." Sarah focused on her breathing, on the feeling of his hand in hers, on the way the moonlight filtered through the trees like liquid silver. Slowly, her racing heart began to calm. "How long have you been like this?" she asked finally. "I was born a shifter. Had my first transformation at 13, which is typical for purebred alphas." He led her to a fallen log at the edge of the clearing, and they sat side by side. "My father was alpha before me, his father before him. The Thornwood line goes back centuries. And your mother?" Something painful flickered across his face. "She died when I was 16. Childbirth complications with my younger sister." Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. "The baby?" "Didn't survive either." Kale's voice was flat, emotionless in the way of someone who'd learned to bury deep pain. "Shifter pregnancies are dangerous, even when both parents are shifters. When a human woman carries a shifter child..." He trailed off, his silver eyes finding hers in the darkness. "The risks are higher." Fear coiled in her gut, cold and sharp. "How much higher?" "I won't lie to you. Historically, human women carrying purebred shifter children had maybe a 60% survival rate. But that was before modern medicine, before we understood the complications." He squeezed her hand. "Our pack has healers, both human doctors and shifter medicine women who've been trained in hybrid pregnancies. You'll have the best care possible." 60%, Sarah repeated numbly. "Those aren't great odds. They're better now. Much better. The last 5 human women in our pack who carried shifter children all survived, and so did their babies." Kale turned to face her fully. "But I need you to understand something, Sarah. If it comes down to a choice, if the healers tell me it's you or the baby, I choose you. Every single time." She blinked, startled. "But you said the baby is your heir, that it could shift power balances in the shifter world." "The baby is important, yes. But you're my mate." The words came out fierce, possessive. "The bond doesn't give me a choice in that. My wolf would tear apart anyone who tried to harm you, including our own child if it came to that. It's not logical, it's not fair, but it's the truth." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. Part of her was touched by the raw honesty. Another part was terrified by the intensity of it, by the weight of being someone's entire world without having asked for it. "Tell me about the pack," she said, needing to change the subject. "What would my life be like if I came with you?" Kale seemed to understand her need for distance from the heavy emotions. He leaned back against a tree, his posture relaxing slightly. "The Silvercrest compound is in the mountains about 2 hours north of Seattle. We have about 200 pack members, plus another 100 humans who've bonded with shifters or work for the pack in various capacities." "Humans live there?" "Of course. We're not isolated from the human world. We just exist alongside it, hidden. Many pack members work regular jobs in nearby towns. We have kids who go to human schools. We're not some cult hiding in caves." A slight smile tugged at his lips. "Though we do have extensive underground facilities for training and full moon runs." "Full moon runs?" "When the moon is full, the pull to shift is nearly irresistible. Most shifters spend those nights in wolf form, running the territory with the pack. It's..." He paused, searching for words. "It's freedom. Pure and primal. The wolf doesn't worry about pack politics or human complications. It just runs and hunts and is." There was such longing in his voice that Sarah found herself asking, "Do you prefer being a wolf?" "Sometimes." His honesty surprised her. "Being alpha means constant decisions, constant responsibility. Every pack member's well-being rests on my shoulders. But when I'm in wolf form, especially during the full moon, all of that falls away. I'm just me, the truest version of myself. And what about after the baby comes? Will it shift immediately? No. Shifter children usually don't have their first transformation until puberty, though they show signs earlier. Enhanced senses, increased strength, heightened emotions. Your child will grow up knowing both worlds. He glanced at her. Both halves of their heritage. The weight of it pressed down on her. This baby, her baby, would never have a normal life. Would never be fully human or fully shifter. Always caught between two worlds. Just like she was now, she realized. The moment that pregnancy test came back positive, her humanity had become something complicated. Something mixed with fur and fangs and ancient instincts. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. I know. Cale shifted closer, and she let herself lean into his warmth. I'm scared too, if that helps. I've been trained my entire life to be alpha, to lead and protect and make impossible decisions. But I've never felt as terrified as I did when I caught your scent yesterday and realized you were carrying my child and you'd been facing this alone for 2 months. I didn't know how to find you, Sarah said. And even if I had, I didn't know if you'd want. She trailed off, unable to finish. I would have wanted. His arm came around her shoulders, solid and steady. The moment I knew, I would have moved heaven and earth to get to you. To protect you, to give you every resource at my disposal. Even though I'm human, even though your pack might not accept me, Cale's jaw tightened. There will be resistance. Some of the older pack members are traditional. They believe alphas should only mate with high-ranking shifter females, that bringing human blood into the alpha line weakens us. His eyes flashed silver. They're wrong, and they'll learn to accept it, or they'll leave. You'd let pack members leave over me. I'd do worse than that if they threatened you. The words were calm, matter of fact, and somehow that made them more chilling. You need to understand something about shifter culture, Sarah. The mate bond is sacred. Once it forms, the bonded pair comes before everything, before pack, before family, even before our own lives. Any shifter who tries to break that bond or harm a mate is exiled at best, executed at worst. Sarah shivered despite the warmth of his body beside hers. That seems extreme. It's survival. Shifters bonded to their mates are stronger, more focused, better leaders. And if word got out that mates could be harmed without consequence, chaos would follow. The bond is what keeps our society stable. He paused. It's also what makes us vulnerable. An alpha's mate is his greatest weakness and his greatest strength. No pressure, then, Sarah muttered. Cale's laugh was short and humorless. I wish I could tell you this would be easy. That you could come to the compound, and everyone would welcome you with open arms. But there will be politics, power plays, people testing your resolve to see if you're worthy of being alpha mate. And what if I'm not? The question escaped before she could stop it. What if I can't handle it? What if I'm just a grad student who got in over her head and doesn't belong in your world? Cale turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness. Then we figure it out together. You don't have to be perfect, Sarah. You don't have to know all the rules or understand pack dynamics or be some warrior queen. You just have to be you. That's all my wolf needs. That's all I need. His silver eyes held hers, and she saw the truth in them. The vulnerability beneath the alpha exterior. The man beneath the wolf. He was just as lost in this as she was, just as uncertain despite all his power and authority. I need time, she whispered. Not to decide about coming with you. I know I don't really have a choice about that. Not if the danger is real. But time to adjust, to process, to figure out who I am in all of this. You have it, as much as you need. He pressed his forehead to hers, and the intimacy of the gesture made her breath catch. But tonight, you're coming back to a safe house I've prepared in the city. Tomorrow we'll start making arrangements to move you to the compound. Agreed? Sarah nodded, too overwhelmed to argue. As they walked back to the SUV, his hand steady in hers, she looked up at the moon hanging heavy and silver in the sky. Everything had changed. There was no going back to the life she'd known. No pretending this was all some elaborate F. Chapter 7. Crossing the threshold. The safe house was nothing like Sarah expected. She'd imagined something sparse and utilitarian. Bare walls. Minimal furniture. The kind of place designed for function over comfort. Instead, Kale pulled up to a charming craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood, with warm lights glowing in the windows and a small garden out front. "This is your idea of a safe house?" she asked as he killed the engine. "It belongs to the pack. We maintain several properties throughout the city for members who need temporary housing." He came around to open her door, ever the gentleman despite the supernatural chaos swirling around them. "I had it prepared for you this afternoon. Your things from the apartment are already inside." Sarah's head snapped toward him. "You went through my apartment?" "I had pack members collect essentials. Clothes, toiletries, your laptop, and research materials." He had the grace to look slightly apologetic. "I didn't go through your things personally, if that helps. And nothing was taken that you won't need." She should be furious about the invasion of privacy, should demand he take her back to her own place immediately. But as they approached the front door, and she caught the scent of something cooking inside, something warm and savory that made her stomach growl, she found her anger deflating. "Is that food?" Elena, one of our pack's human cooks, prepared meals for the next few days. She specialized in pregnancy-friendly dishes after her daughter bonded with a shifter. Kale unlocked the door and gestured for her to enter. She's also left instructions for managing morning sickness and fatigue. She went through it herself. The house's interior was even more welcoming than the exterior. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture in earth tones, and a kitchen that opened into a cozy living room with a fireplace already crackling with flames. On the counter sat several covered dishes, and the smell of roasted chicken and herbs made Sarah's mouth water. "When did you arrange all of this?" she asked, moving toward the food like a magnet. "This morning, after I left your apartment. I knew you'd need somewhere safe, somewhere comfortable." He shrugged off his jacket. "Alpha privilege. When I make a request, the pack moves quickly." Sarah lifted the lid on one of the dishes, revealing perfectly roasted vegetables and chicken. "You were that confident I'd come with you." "I was that prepared for any outcome." Kale moved to the cabinets, pulling down plates with the familiarity of someone who knew this space well. "If you'd refused, I would have had pack members stationed around your apartment building and brought you meals there. This was just the preferred option." He plated food for both of them, and Sarah found herself sitting at the small dining table, eating the first meal in days that didn't make her stomach rebel. The chicken was tender, seasoned with rosemary and garlic, and the roasted vegetables were caramelized to perfection. "This is incredible," she mumbled around a mouthful. "Elena's been cooking for the pack for 20 years. She knows what she's doing." Kyle watched her eat with an expression that was almost tender. "You haven't been eating enough. I could tell yesterday. You've lost weight. Morning sickness has been brutal." Sarah took another bite, savoring the way the food settled comfortably in her stomach. "Nothing stays down except crackers and ginger ale. Elena's meals should help. She uses herbs that ease nausea without medication." He pushed a glass of water toward her. "And our pack healer, Dr. Chen, will see you tomorrow. She'll do a full examination, make sure everything's progressing normally." The reminder of what normally meant for this pregnancy, accelerated development, enhanced abilities, a 60% historical survival rate, made Sarah's appetite falter. She set down her fork. What if something goes wrong? The question came out smaller than she intended. What if my body can't handle carrying a shifter baby? Kale was around the table in an instant, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye level. "Then Dr. Chen will know what to do. She's delivered 17 hybrid babies in the last decade, and all 17 mothers and children survived. She knows the warning signs, knows how to intervene." His hand covered hers. "I won't let anything happen to you, Sarah, I swear it." "You can't promise that. You're not a doctor." "No, but I'm an alpha, and I have resources most people can't imagine. If your pregnancy becomes complicated, I'll bring in every specialist in the country. I'll spare no expense. Pull every string, call in every favor." His silver eyes blazed with intensity. "You and this baby are the most important things in my world now. Everything else is secondary." The fierce protectiveness in his voice should have overwhelmed her. Instead, it made something warm unfurl in her chest, something that felt dangerously like trust. "I need to call my friend Marissa," she said quietly. "Let her know I'm okay. She'll worry if I just disappear." Kale nodded. "Of course, but be careful what you tell her. The fewer people who know about shifters, the safer everyone is. Sarah pulled out her phone and stepped into the living room, suddenly needing space from Cale's overwhelming presence. Marissa answered on the second ring. Thank God. I've been worried sick. How did it go? It went, well, better than expected. Sarah sank onto the couch, choosing her words carefully. I'm staying at his place for a few days. We're talking things through. His place? Sarah, you barely know this guy. I know, but it feels right. And that was the truth, wasn't it? Despite the insanity of the situation, despite everything she'd learned tonight, being here felt more right than anything had in months. He's not what I expected. He's protective. Maybe overly so, but in a good way. Protective is good. Controlling is bad. You know the difference, right? Did she? The line between Kyle's protectiveness and control seemed blurry at best. But then she thought of the way he'd knelt beside her chair just now. The way he'd given her space to process even when his instincts probably screamed at him to hover. I know the difference, she said. And if anything feels wrong, I'll call you immediately. I promise. They talked for a few more minutes before Marissa reluctantly let her go. When Sarah returned to the kitchen, Cale was cleaning up the dishes, his movements efficient and practiced. Everything okay? He asked without turning around. Fine. She just needed to know I wasn't being held captive by some controlling stalker. Cale's shoulders tensed. Is that what you think I am? Honestly? I don't know what you are. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, studying him. You're an alpha werewolf who claims I'm your destined mate. You've upended my entire life in less than 48 hours. You've made decisions about my safety without consulting me, but you've also been gentler with me than anyone has in a long time. So no, I don't think you're a stalker, but I'm not sure what to call you either. He set down the dish he was washing and turned to face her, water dripping from his hands. Call me Cale. Just Cale. Not Alpha, not your mate, just the man who's trying desperately not to screw this up. The vulnerability in his admission made her chest ache. This powerful Alpha who commanded hundreds of shifters was just as uncertain as she was, just as afraid of making the wrong move. Okay, Cale. She moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Show me the rest of the house? Relief flickered across his face. Of course. He led her through the space. A comfortable living room, a small office with a desk where her laptop was already set up, a bathroom stocked with her toiletries. And finally upstairs, 2 bedrooms. This one's yours, Cale said, opening the door to reveal a spacious room with a queen bed, soft lighting, and her clothes already hanging in the closet. I'll be across the hall if you need anything. Sarah stepped inside, taking in the care that had gone into preparing the space. Fresh flowers on the nightstand, her favorite books stacked on the dresser. Even the bedding looked similar to what she had at home, soft and simple, in shades of blue and gray. How did you know? She asked, touching the flowers gently. I may have asked Marissa for some details. Before you panic, I didn't tell her anything about shifters. Just said I wanted to make you comfortable and needed to know your preferences. You talked to my best friend behind my back? I talked to your best friend because I was trying to do this right. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping into his voice. I know I'm not handling everything perfectly, Sarah. I'm used to making decisions quickly, to taking action rather than waiting for permission. But I'm trying to balance keeping you safe with respecting your autonomy, and it's harder than anything I've ever done. The raw honesty disarmed her. Why is it so hard? Because the bond makes me want to lock you away where nothing can ever hurt you. Because my wolf sees you as precious and irreplaceable, and every instinct I have screams at me to eliminate any potential threat. His eyes glowed silver in the dim light. But you're not some fragile thing that needs to be caged. You're strong and smart and capable of making your own choices. So I'm fighting everything in my nature to give you space while also dying inside every time you're out of my sight. Sarah's breath caught. That sounds exhausting. It is. A tired smile tugged at his lips. Welcome to the mate bond. It's beautiful and terrible and completely overwhelming. She should tell him to leave. Should close the door between them and take the night to process everything alone. But instead she heard herself asking, will you stay? Just for a little while? I don't want to be alone right now. Chapter 8. Pack Dynamics. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back. The transformation, the safe house, falling asleep while Kyle told her stories about growing up in the pack. He must have left after she'd dozed off, because she was alone in the bed, still fully clothed and covered with a soft throw blanket that hadn't been there before. She padded downstairs barefoot, following the scent of coffee and something sweet. In the kitchen, Cale stood at the stove, flipping what looked like blueberry pancakes with surprising competence. He'd changed into fresh clothes, dark jeans and a gray thermal that emphasized the lean strength of his frame. "Morning," he said without turning around. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks, actually." Sarah slid onto one of the bar stools, watching him work. "I didn't know alphas cooked. This alpha does. I lived alone for 5 years before becoming pack leader. It was either learn to cook or survive on takeout." He plated 3 perfect pancakes and set them in front of her, along with butter and real maple syrup. "Elena left instructions, but I figured I could handle breakfast." The pancakes were fluffy and studded with fresh blueberries. Sarah's stomach, which had been rebelling against food for weeks, actually growled with hunger. "You're full of surprises." "Good surprises, I hope." Kyle poured her a glass of orange juice. No coffee, she noticed, probably because of the pregnancy, and leaned against the counter. "Dr. Chen will be here at 10. She'll do an examination, answer any questions you have about the pregnancy." Sarah's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Here? Not at a hospital?" Pack members don't typically use human hospitals for shifter-related medical care. Too many questions, too much risk of exposure. He must have seen the concern on her face because he added quickly, "But Dr. Chen is a fully licensed obstetrician. She did her residency at Johns Hopkins and practiced in human hospitals for 15 years before coming back to serve the pack full-time. You'll be in good hands. It's just a lot to adjust to. Yesterday, I was a grad student with a secret pregnancy. Now, I'm apparently part of some supernatural medical system I didn't know existed." "I know." Kyle moved around the counter to sit beside her, though he left a careful few inches of space between them. "And I know I keep saying this, but you can still change your mind about any of it. If you want human doctors, regular hospitals, I'll make it work. Your comfort matters more than pack protocol." The concession surprised her. Everything she'd learned about shifter culture suggested protocols were sacred, not to be broken lightly. "Really? Really? You're my mate, Sarah. That means your needs supersede tradition." His silver eyes held hers. "Though I should mention that Dr. Chen has equipment here that most hospitals don't. Technology designed specifically for monitoring hybrid pregnancies. She'll be able to tell things about the baby's development that human doctors couldn't." "Like what?" "Whether the child will be a dominant or submissive shifter. How strong their wolf will be. If there are any complications related to the hybrid nature of the pregnancy." He paused. "She'll also be able to tell if you're developing any abilities yourself." Sarah set down her fork. "You said the bond might bring out latent abilities. What kind of abilities?" "It varies. Some human mates develop enhanced senses, better hearing, sharper vision, stronger sense of smell. Others develop what we call pack sense, the ability to feel the emotions of nearby shifters, to sense danger before it manifests." Kale's expression grew serious. "And in very rare cases, human mates can develop a partial shift. Not full transformation, but enough to manifest claws, enhanced strength, accelerated healing." "That sounds terrifying." "It can be if you don't know how to control it. But that's why you'd come to the compound, to learn control, to understand what's happening to your body." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "You're not human anymore, Sarah, not entirely. The moment the bond formed, you became something in between, and the baby will only accelerate that change." She wanted to pull away, to deny what he was saying, but she couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. The heightened senses, the strange dreams, the way she could smell emotions on people now. Fear had a sharp, acrid scent. Happiness smelled like sunlight and honey. And Kale? Kale smelled like home. What if I don't want to change? The question came out barely above a whisper. "Then we'll do everything we can to slow the process, to help you maintain as much of your humanity as possible. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. But Sarah, you need to understand, you can't stop it completely. Not while you're carrying my child. The pregnancy will bring out your shifter traits whether we want it to or not. Before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. Kale's posture immediately shifted. Less gentle lover, more commanding alpha. That'll be Dr. Chen. You ready? No, Sarah thought. She wasn't ready for any of this. But she nodded anyway. Dr. Chen turned out to be a petite woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She carried a large medical bag and moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Sarah Whitmore, she said, extending her hand. I've heard so much about you. Congratulations on the pregnancy. Thank you, Sarah managed, shaking the offered hand. Why don't we get you examined, and then we can talk about what to expect in the coming months. Dr. Chen's tone was professional but warm. Kyle, you can stay or step out, Sarah's choice. Sarah surprised herself by saying, he can stay. The examination was thorough, but not uncomfortable. Dr. Chen used a portable ultrasound machine that looked more advanced than anything Sarah had seen in regular clinics, and when the image appeared on the screen, Sarah's breath caught. There was the baby, barely more than a blob of cells, but undeniably real. Undeniably hers. Everything looks excellent, Dr. Chen said, studying the screen with practiced eyes. The fetus is measuring at about 9 weeks, which is consistent with your timeline. Heart rate is strong at 175 beats per minute. Is that normal? Sarah asked, unable to look away from the screen. For a hybrid pregnancy, yes. Shifter babies typically have slightly elevated heart rates compared to human babies. Dr. Chen made notes on a tablet. I'm also seeing early signs of enhanced development. The spine is forming ahead of schedule, and the skeletal structure already shows increased density. What does that mean? Kale's voice was tight with concern. It means the baby is developing shifter traits as expected. Nothing concerning, just confirmation that this is indeed an alpha-level hybrid. Dr. Chen looked between them. Have you experienced any unusual symptoms, Sarah? Beyond typical first trimester issues, my senses are sharper. I can smell things I couldn't before. Hear conversations from rooms away. And the dreams. She trailed off, unsure how to explain them. Running dreams? Hunting dreams? Feeling like you have 4 legs instead of 2? Yes, exactly that. Dr. Chen nodded as if she'd expected this. That's your wolf awakening. It won't be a full wolf. You don't have the genetic structure for complete transformation. But you're developing what we call a shadow wolf. An aspect of your psyche that's connected to the shifter world. Is that dangerous? Not if you learn to work with it instead of fighting it. Dr. Chen began packing up her equipment. I'm going to recommend you move to the compound within the next 2 weeks. You'll need to start training sessions with our PAC's mentor, someone who specializes in helping human mates adjust to their new abilities. 2 weeks? Sarah's voice pitched higher. I have classes, a thesis to finish, which you can do from the compound, Kale interjected. We have excellent internet video conferencing capabilities. Your advisor doesn't need to know you've relocated. And if my symptoms get worse, if someone notices I'm different, then you'll be putting yourself and the baby at risk, Dr. Chen said gently but firmly. Sarah, I've been doing this for a long time. Human mates who try to maintain their old lives during hybrid pregnancies invariably struggle. The changes are too noticeable. The risks too high. You need the support structure the PAC can provide. Sarah looked at Kale, seeing the carefully controlled hope in his eyes. He wanted her at the compound, wanted her surrounded by his PAC where he could protect her, and she was realizing, with a mixture of fear and resignation, that she didn't have much choice. 2 weeks, she said finally. I need 2 weeks to finish the semester, to make arrangements with my advisor, to say goodbye to my life here. 2 weeks, Kale agreed, though his jaw was tight. But you stay here where I can keep you safe. And if there's any sign of danger, any threat at all, we move immediately. Deal. Sarah nodded, feeling like she was signing away her freedom, even as she knew it was necessary. Dr. Chen left with promises to return in a few days for another checkup, and then Sarah was alone with Kyle again, the weight of her decision settling over her like a shroud. You're doing the right thing. he said quietly. Then why does it feel like I'm losing everything? Chapter 9. Shadows and Threats. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Sarah worked on her thesis during the mornings, video conferencing with her advisor and classmates from the small office Cale had set up for her. Professor Martinez noticed nothing amiss, though Sarah caught herself making excuses about a family situation that required her to work remotely for a while. The lies came easier than she'd expected, which bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Cale was surprisingly respectful of her space. He left for pack business most afternoons, returning with dinner and carefully neutral updates about preparations at the compound. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. But she could feel his presence even when he was in another room, a constant hum beneath her skin that was becoming disturbingly familiar. On the fourth night, Sarah woke to the sound of growling. She sat bolt upright, her heart hammering as the sound came again, low and threatening, coming from somewhere outside. Moonlight streamed through the window, and she could see shadows moving across the lawn. Her door burst open. Kyle stood there, shirtless and barefoot, his eyes blazing pure silver. "Stay inside. Lock the door behind me. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "What's happening?" "Rogues, 3 of them, testing our defenses." His voice had taken on that rough, growling quality that meant his wolf was close to the surface. "They can smell you, smell what you're carrying. They're trying to get to you." Terror spiked through her. "Cale, I won't let them touch you." He was already moving toward the stairs. Lock the door. Then he was gone, and she heard the sound of the back door slamming open. Sarah scrambled out of bed, torn between following his orders and needing to see what was happening. She compromised by going to the window, pressing herself against the wall where she could see out without being visible. The scene below made her blood run cold. 3 massive wolves circled the backyard, 2 gray, 1 rust-colored, all of them smaller than Cale's wolf form but still terrifyingly large. They moved with coordinated precision, clearly working as a team, and there in the center of the yard, another wolf appeared, black as midnight, easily twice the size of the others. Kyle. He moved with lethal grace, positioning himself between the house and the intruders. The rogues circled him warily, and even from her vantage point, Sarah could sense their hesitation. They might have numbers, but Cale had power. The rust-colored wolf lunged first. What followed was too fast for Sarah to fully process. Cale moved like liquid shadow, dodging the attack and catching the rogue by the throat. There was a terrible cracking sound, and the rust-colored wolf went limp. Cale dropped it and turned to face the other 2, blood gleaming on his muzzle. One of the gray wolves turned and ran. Smart, Sarah thought distantly. But the other, larger, probably male, stood its ground. It circled Kyle slowly, looking for an opening. Sarah's hand pressed against the window, her breath fogging the glass. She should look away, should give them privacy for this brutal display of violence. But she couldn't tear her eyes from Cale's form, from the raw power and deadly efficiency of his movements. The gray wolf attacked from the side, trying to catch Cale's flank. But Cale was ready. He spun, faster than should have been possible, and met the attack head-on. They collided in a tangle of fur and fangs, and Sarah heard herself gasp as the gray wolf's claws raked across Cale's shoulder. The wound only seemed to enrage him. Cale's jaws closed around the gray wolf's neck, and he shook, once, violently. The gray wolf went still. 2 bodies lay in the yard now. Cale stood over them, his massive form heaving with breath. Slowly, he raised his head and looked directly at Sarah's window. Those silver eyes found hers through the glass, and she saw something feral there, something that was all wolf and no man. Then he threw back his head and howled. The sound raised every hair on Sarah's body. It was triumph and warning and possession all rolled into one haunting note. "This is my territory," the howl said. "This is my mate. Come for her and die." Sarah backed away from the window, her legs shaking. She'd seen Cale transform, had touched his wolf form in that moonlit clearing. But this violence, this raw display of predatory power, was something else entirely. This was what he'd meant when he'd said he would burn down anyone who tried to take her. This was the Alpha. Minutes passed. Then she heard the back door open and close, heard footsteps on the stairs. A soft knock on her door. "Sarah, it's me. I'm mostly me. Can I come in?" His voice was rough, strained. She unlocked the door with trembling fingers. Cale stood in the hallway, human again but marked by the fight. Blood smeared his bare chest. Some of it his own from the wound on his shoulder, some of it clearly not. His eyes were still more silver than human, and his hands shook slightly as he held them up in a placating gesture. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said. "I didn't want you to see that side of me." Sarah should be horrified. Should be backing away from this man, this creature, who just killed 2 others with brutal efficiency. But instead she found herself stepping forward, her hands reaching for the wound on his shoulder. "You're hurt. It's already healing. Shifter metabolism." But he didn't stop her from touching the torn flesh, didn't pull away as her fingers traced the edges of the claw marks. "Are you okay? You're not afraid, was she?" Sarah searched her feelings, expecting to find terror or revulsion. Instead, she found something else, a fierce satisfaction that he'd protected her. Pride that he'd been strong enough to face 3 attackers and win. The shadow wolf Dr. Chen had mentioned, she realized. It was waking up inside her, responding to the display of power with approval rather than fear. "I should be afraid," she said quietly. "But I'm not. I'm angry that they came here. Angry that they threatened our baby." The words came out before she could stop them. Our baby. When had she started thinking of it that way? Kyle's eyes widened slightly, something like wonder crossing his face. "The bond is strengthening. You're starting to think like Pac. Is that what this is? Because it feels insane. I watched you kill 2 wolves, and instead of calling the police, I want to make sure you're not hurt." She looked up at him, searching his face. "What's happening to me? You're becoming what you were always meant to be." He cupped her face with surprising gentleness, given what those hands had just done. "My mate, my equal, the mother of my heir. I don't feel like anyone's equal. I feel like I'm drowning." "Then let me be your anchor." Cale's thumb traced her cheekbone. "Let me help you through this. That's what mates do. They hold each other up when the world gets too heavy." Sarah wanted to resist, wanted to maintain her independence. But she was so tired of being strong alone, so tired of pretending she could handle this impossible situation by herself. "The bodies," she said instead. "What happens to them?" "Pack cleanup crew will be here within the hour. They'll remove all evidence, make it look like nothing happened." His expression hardened. "But this is just the beginning, Sarah. Word is spreading about you, about the baby. There will be more attempts, more dangerous ones. Then we go to the compound. Tomorrow." The decision crystallized with sudden clarity. "I can finish my thesis remotely. My classes can wait. But I won't put our baby at risk because I'm clinging to a life that doesn't exist anymore." Cale's arms came around her, pulling her against his chest. She should protest the blood, the violence still clinging to him. Instead, she burrowed closer, breathing in his scent, pine and rain and earth and safety. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you for trusting me." "I don't trust you," she corrected, but there was no heat in it. "I trust that you'll protect us. There's a difference. It's a start." His lips brushed her forehead, gentle despite the predator still lurking beneath his skin. "Get some rest. We leave at first light." But Sarah didn't go back to her room. She let Kyle lead her to his instead, let him settle her in his bed with the covers pulled up around her. And when he moved to leave, she caught his hand. "Stay. Please." He hesitated for only a moment before climbing in beside her, careful to keep space between them despite the bed's generous size. But Sarah shifted closer, needing the solid warmth of him after the violence of the night. "I've got you," Cale murmured, as her eyes drifted closed. "Nothing will touch you while I'm here. I promise." And surrounded by his scent and his warmth and the steady beat of his heart, Sarah finally let herself believe him. Tomorrow they would leave for the compound. Tomorrow she would step fully into this new world. But tonight, she was exactly where she needed to be, safe in the arms of her alpha. Chapter 10. Entering the den, dawn broke cold and gray as Kale loaded the last of Sarah's belongings into the SUV. She stood on the porch of the safe house, coffee mug warming her hands, watching the neighborhood slowly wake up. Normal people heading to normal jobs, living normal lives that no longer included her. Having second thoughts? Kale asked, coming to stand beside her. About 100 of them. She took a sip of the herbal tea Elena had recommended. Not coffee, which her body now rejected violently. But that doesn't change what needs to happen. He nodded, understanding in his silver eyes. The wound on his shoulder had healed completely overnight, leaving only faint pink lines that would fade by afternoon. Shifter healing, he'd explained. One of many advantages she'd learn about in the coming months. One of many things that separated him from the humanity she was leaving behind. The drive into the mountains took 2 hours, winding through increasingly dense forest until the paved road gave way to gravel, then to packed dirt. Sarah watched civilization disappear in the rearview mirror, her stomach knotting with each passing mile. The compound is hidden from human eyes, Kale explained as they drove. We have enchantments, old magic worked by pack witches, that make humans feel uncomfortable getting too close. They find reasons to turn back, to take different routes. It's not perfect, but it keeps casual explorers away. Pack witches? Sarah added it to the growing list of impossible things she now had to accept. As in actual magic? Shifters aren't the only supernatural beings in the world. Witches, vampires, fae, they all exist, all have their own territories and power structures. The pack has alliances with local covens. They provide magical protection. We provide physical security. It's been working for generations. Vampires. Fae. Next, he'd tell her dragons were real too. Sarah pressed a hand to her temple, feeling the beginnings of a headache. One thing at a time, Kyle said gently, reading her expression. Today you just need to meet the pack. Everything else can wait. They rounded a final curve, and Sarah's breath caught. The Silvercrest compound was nothing like she'd imagined. Instead of some primitive collection of cabins, she saw a sprawling estate that looked like it had been carved from the mountain itself. The main house was massive, 3 stories of stone and timber with huge windows overlooking a valley below. Around it clustered smaller buildings, cottages, what looked like a school, a large communal hall, and structures whose purposes she could only guess at. And everywhere, people. They stopped what they were doing as Kale's SUV pulled up to the main house. Sarah saw men and women of all ages, some in work clothes, some in business attire heading out for the day. Children played in a fenced yard near the school. A group of teenagers practiced what looked like martial arts in an open training ground. All of them turned to stare as Kale parked. They can smell you, Kale said quietly. Smell that you're human, that you're carrying my child. Some of them have never seen an alpha mate bond with a human before. No pressure, Sarah muttered, her hands twisting in her lap. Kale covered her hands with one of his. You don't have to prove anything to them. You're my mate. That's all the legitimacy you need. But as Sarah stepped out of the SUV, feeling dozens of eyes tracking her every movement, she didn't feel legitimate. She felt like an imposter, a human playing at being something she'd never truly be. An older woman approached from the main house, tall and elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that were a startling amber. She moved with the grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime knowing exactly who she was and what she was worth. Kyle, she said, her voice warm but formal. Welcome home. Sarah, this is Margaret Thornwood, my aunt and the pack's second in command. Kale's hand settled on the small of Sarah's back, a subtle claim. Margaret, this is Sarah Whitmore, my mate. Margaret's amber eyes studied Sarah with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Human, she said finally, not quite a question. Yes, Sarah said, lifting her chin. She wouldn't apologize for what she was. Is that a problem? A smile ghosted across Margaret's lips. Bold. Good. You'll need that here. She extended her hand, and Sarah shook it, surprised by the strength in the older woman's grip. The pack has questions, Kyle. Concerns about bringing a human into the Alpha line. Then they can bring those concerns to me directly. Sarah is under my protection. Kyle's voice carried a warning edge. Anyone who threatens her, questions her right to be here, will answer to me. Make that clear? Already done. Though I'd suggest you address the pack formally tonight. Let them see her, scent her. Understand what the bond means. Margaret's gaze shifted back to Sarah. It will help ease tensions. The thought of standing in front of hundreds of shifters while they scented her made Sarah's stomach lurch. I don't know if I'm ready for that. You are, Kyle said with quiet certainty. You faced down my wolf in that clearing. You survived a rogue attack without panic. You're stronger than you think. Margaret nodded approvingly. I'll make the arrangements. Dinner gathering tonight in the communal hall. Formal introduction. She started to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, girl. I'm glad Cale found you. He's been alone too long. An alpha without a mate is a dangerous thing. She walked away before Sarah could respond, barking orders to pack members who scattered to do her bidding. She's intense, Sarah said. She's been running pack operations since my father died. Without her, we would have fallen apart during the transition. Kyle guided her toward the main house. She's also fiercely protective of pack stability. If she's giving you a chance, that's a good sign. The inside of the main house was as impressive as the exterior. Hardwood floors, soaring ceilings with exposed beams, and huge windows that let in floods of natural light. But what struck Sarah most was how lived in it felt. Family photos covered the walls. Children's artwork decorated the refrigerator. Books and blankets scattered across comfortable furniture. This wasn't just an alpha's headquarters. This was a home. Your rooms are on the 3rd floor, Cale said, leading her up a grand staircase. Private wing, separate entrance if you want it. I'm right next door, but you'll have your own space. He opened a door to reveal a suite that was more apartment than bedroom. A spacious bedroom with a king bed and fireplace. A sitting area with a desk already set up with her laptop. A bathroom with a deep soaking tub. And through another door, a small nursery painted in soft sage green, already furnished with a crib and rocking chair. Sarah's throat tightened. You did this? All of this? The pack did. Everyone contributed something. Furniture, decorations, supplies. Cale moved to the nursery doorway, his expression soft. They may have questions about you being human, but they understand what an alpha heir means. This child will be celebrated, protected, raised by the entire pack. The weight of it hit her suddenly. This baby wouldn't just be hers and Kyle's. It would belong to all of them. To this community she was only beginning to understand. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt almost comforting. She wouldn't be raising this child alone. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A young woman with auburn hair and golden eyes peeked in. Alpha? Sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Chen wants to do an examination before tonight's gathering. Make sure the journey didn't cause any complications. Of course. Sarah? Cale looked to her for permission. She nodded, grateful for something concrete to focus on. Let's get it over with. Dr. Chen's examination revealed that the baby was thriving, developing even faster than expected. You're measuring at about 11 weeks now, despite only being 9 weeks along. Accelerated development is normal for alpha-level hybrids, but this is on the higher end of the scale. Is that bad? Sarah asked, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Not bad, just significant. It means the baby will be powerful, probably dominant. And it means your pregnancy will progress quickly. You'll likely deliver around 5 months instead of 6. Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet. It also means your abilities will manifest faster. Have you noticed any changes since the attack last night? Sarah thought about it. Her senses had been sharp before, but this morning she'd been able to hear conversations from 3 houses away. She'd smelled breakfast cooking in the communal hall from half a mile up the road. Everything's louder, stronger. Your shadow wolf is emerging. We'll start training sessions tomorrow with Cassandra, our pack mentor. She'll help you learn control before the changes become overwhelming. After Dr. Chen left, Sarah found herself alone in her new rooms, staring out at the valley below. Somewhere out there was her old life, her apartment, her university, her plans for a future that made sense. But here, in these mountains surrounded by shifters and magic and impossible things, was her new reality. And tonight she would stand before the pack and claim her place in it, whether she was ready or not. A soft knock drew her attention. Cale stood in the doorway, changed into formal clothes, dark slacks and a charcoal shirt that emphasized the silver of his eyes. "It's time," he said, extending his hand. "Ready to meet your new family?" No, Sarah thought. She wasn't ready. Would probably never be ready. But she took his hand anyway and followed him downstairs, toward the sounds of the gathering pack and the destiny she could no longer escape.